Right now, while you're reading this, your backyard is not empty. It is not silent, and it is definitely not asleep. Between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., something strange happens, something most humans will never witness in their entire lives. The bird you see chirping at sunrise, it is alive right now, but it is not doing what you think. Some birds are half awake, with one eye literally open in the dark, scanning for death. Some are burning their bodies just to survive the cold. Some are falling into a sleep so deep it looks like death itself. And above your head, thousands of birds are flying through total darkness, guided by forces you cannot see or feel. And while all of this is happening, your backyard becomes a battlefield of survival, navigation, hunting, and deception. Nothing is random. Nothing is resting the way you imagine. Because the truth is, night is not the end of bird activity. It is when the real story begins. And once you understand what happens between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., you will never look at birds the same way again. The hidden survival state. Most people imagine nighttime in a backyard as a pause button. Lights off, sound off, life slowed down until morning. But birds don't treat night as rest in the human sense. At around 2 a.m., your backyard is still full of life, but it has shifted into a completely different operating mode. What looks like silence is actually a carefully managed survival system running in real time. Take a common backyard bird like the cardinal. In daylight, it appears alert, reactive, and fully present. But at night, that same bird enters a state that doesn't fit neatly into the idea of sleep. Scientists call it vigilant rest, and it is far more complex than simple sleep. Instead of shutting down completely, the bird splits its brain into two working states. One half enters deep rest. The other half stays partially alert. This allows the bird to conserve energy while still monitoring danger. Even more unusual, the bird doesn't just feel alert on one side. It physically shifts awareness between hemispheres of the brain throughout the night. This means that at any given moment between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., a bird may literally be half asleep while still watching its surroundings. And the surveillance doesn't stop there. Many species also rely on unihemispheric slow-wave sleep, a biological mechanism confirmed in multiple avian studies. It allows one eye to remain open while the opposite hemisphere of the brain rests. So in practical terms, a bird resting in your yard at night might appear motionless, but one eye is actively scanning the environment in complete darkness. This is not paranoia. It is adaptation, because night is when they're most vulnerable. Between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., temperatures typically reach their lowest point of the entire 24-hour cycle. For small birds, this is critical. Their bodies are constantly losing heat, and maintaining internal temperature requires continuous energy burn. A bird weighing only a few dozen grams does not have the luxury of stored energy reserves like larger animals. Every hour of cold demands fuel. So while it appears inactive, its body is still working aggressively behind the scenes, balancing temperature, conserving fat, and minimizing movement to avoid energy loss. Even the posture changes. Feathers are fluffed to trap heat. Feet are tucked in. Movement is minimized to near zero. From a distance, it looks like deep sleep. But inside, it is a tightly controlled survival equation. Too much heat lost death. Too much movement energy depletion. Too much alertness wasted calories. Everything is balanced with precision. And this is only one layer of what is happening in your backyard at this hour. Because not every bird is simply resting in survival mode. Some are actively lowering their body temperature even further, pushing their physiology to the edge of what is biologically possible just to survive until dawn. And others are preparing for something even more extreme than rest, a state that borders on shutdown. The controlled shutdown. Deep inside a tree cavity, hidden behind bark and darkness, a tiny bird is doing something that seems impossible. It is turning itself down to survive. At around 2:30 a.m., when winter temperatures reach their lowest point, small birds like chickadees face a mathematical problem their bodies were never supposed to solve easily. They're too small to store large amounts of fat, too warm-blooded to stop burning energy, and too exposed to survive the cold without constant metabolic effort. So nature gave them a terrifying adaptation. Instead of maintaining normal body temperature through the night, they deliberately allow themselves to become colder, much colder. This state is known as regulated hypothermia, a controlled reduction of body temperature and metabolic activity that helps the bird survive the longest, coldest hours before sunrise. To understand how extreme this is, imagine your own body suddenly dropping by more than 20 degrees while your heartbeat slows dramatically and your system enters a near motionless state. For a human, that would be a medical emergency. For a chickadee, it is survival strategy. During the day, a chickadee's heart can beat hundreds of times per minute. Its metabolism runs at an astonishing speed just to maintain warmth. But at night, especially between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., that pace becomes unsustainable. So the bird begins shutting systems down. Body temperature falls. Heart rate slows. Breathing becomes shallow. Movement nearly disappears. To an outside observer, the bird would look dead. And in some ways, it exists dangerously close to that line. Because entering this state is risky. If the bird cools too much, it may not recover. If a predator appears, it may react too slowly. If it is disturbed repeatedly, it can burn through the very energy reserves it is trying to conserve. This is why nighttime disturbances matter more than most people realize. A flashlight beam, a barking dog, loud movement near a nesting tree. These things may seem harmless to us, but to a bird operating at the edge of survival, they can trigger emergency arousal. The body instantly reverses the shutdown process. Metabolism surges upward. Temperature climbs rapidly. The nervous system reactivates. Flight muscles prepare for escape. And all of that costs energy, a massive amount of energy. One sudden awakening can consume reserves the bird needed to survive the remaining hours before dawn. If it happens repeatedly during one cold night, the bird may simply run out of fuel before morning arrives. This is the hidden brutality of nighttime survival in small birds. The stillness you see in winter trees is not comfort. It is controlled endurance. And while some birds are hidden away in near-frozen silence, others are doing the exact opposite. Far above your house, invisible in the darkness, entire rivers of birds are moving through the night sky. Thousands of them, flying for hours across continents while the world below sleeps completely unaware. The invisible river in the sky. While the birds in your backyard struggle to survive the cold below, something extraordinary is happening above your house. At 3 a.m., the night sky is not empty. It is crowded. Thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, of birds are moving overhead in complete darkness, forming one of the largest migrations on Earth while almost nobody notices. These are not owls or nocturnal hunters. These are ordinary songbirds, warblers, thrushes, sparrows, tanagers, orioles. The same birds that appear at your feeder weeks later may already be passing over your roof tonight, flying silently through the dark at altitudes high enough to remain completely invisible. Most people imagine migration happening during the day, large formations crossing bright skies. But for many small birds, the real journey begins after sunset. Shortly after dusk, they launch into the air and climb higher and higher until they reach stable nighttime currents. Then they continue flying for hours without stopping. And between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., they are at the deepest point of that journey. Too far to turn back, still far from landing, suspended between continents in darkness. The scale of it is difficult to imagine. Radar studies from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology have shown that migration nights can carry enormous waves of birds across North America in a single evening. Entire skies filled with movement humans never hear and never see. But the strangest part is not the distance. It is how they navigate. Because these birds are not flying blindly. They're using systems that sound almost impossible. Research from the University of Oldenburg suggests migratory birds can detect Earth's magnetic field using specialized light-sensitive proteins called cryptochromes inside their eyes. In other words, birds may literally perceive magnetic orientation visually. Not as numbers, not as instinct alone, but as spatial information layered onto the world around them. Imagine looking at the night sky and seeing invisible pathways stretching across the horizon like glowing coordinates that may be closer to the bird's experience than we once believed. And magnetic navigation is only one part of the system. On clear nights, many birds also use stars. Experiments have shown that migrating birds orient themselves using constellations and rotational patterns in the sky. As the stars shift through the night, birds continuously recalibrate direction mid-flight. When clouds cover the sky, they lean more heavily on magnetic cues. When coastlines, rivers, or mountain ranges appear below, they use geography too. Multiple navigation systems operating simultaneously, all inside a brain smaller than a walnut. And somehow it works, night after night, year after year, generation after generation. Above your sleeping neighborhood, birds are crossing entire regions with a level of precision humans still struggle to fully understand. But while some birds are traveling through darkness, others are waiting inside it, perfectly still, perfectly silent. Because for certain predators, the hours between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. are not about survival or migration. They are about hunting. The hunters, the lights, and the broken night. At 2:23 a.m., somewhere near your yard, something is watching. Completely motionless. An eastern screech owl sits on a branch above the darkness, almost invisible against the bark. It has likely been there for several minutes without moving at all, waiting. This is the advantage of the night hunter. While smaller birds are conserving energy and migratory birds cross the sky overhead, the owl is listening. Every rustle in dead leaves, every movement beneath grass, every vibration in the dark. Its hearing is so sensitive it can locate prey without needing to see it clearly. And when the moment comes, the attack happens with terrifying speed. The owl launches silently, not quietly, silently. Specialized feathers break apart airflow around the wings, removing the sound most birds make in flight. To a mouse below, there is no warning signal, no growing noise, no chance to react. By the time the prey senses movement, the strike is already over. And every small bird in your yard knows predators like this exist. Even while resting, they're constantly balancing one impossible question. How deeply can I sleep without dying? But in modern neighborhoods, another threat now exists, one nature never prepared them for. Artificial light. Street lights, porch lights, parking lots, glowing windows. Humans have altered nighttime so dramatically that some birds can no longer tell when night ends and morning begins. And nowhere is this more obvious than with robins. Researchers began noticing something strange in suburban areas. Robins singing at 2 o'clock or 3 a.m. Not dawn chorus, not early morning calls. Full territorial song in the middle of the night. The cause was eventually traced to light pollution. To the robin's brain, artificial light can mimic the brightness of approaching sunrise, triggering hormones that signal morning activity hours too early. So the bird wakes up. It begins singing, defending territory, and burning precious energy during the coldest part of the night, the exact time it should be conserving strength to survive until dawn. What sounds peaceful to us is actually biological confusion. A disrupted circadian rhythm, a survival system being overridden by human environments. And when you step back and look at the entire picture, the night becomes something very different from what most people imagine. Between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., your backyard is not asleep. It is surviving. Birds are rationing energy. Predators are hunting. Migrants are crossing continents overhead. And artificial light is quietly reshaping behaviors that evolved over millions of years. All of it happening while most humans never even look outside.